It's happening quite a bit in Asia, for example, as well. And it's happening, as I was saying, by understanding which are the cracks in the system. Liz, I'm not sure if you want me to continue with the questions in the chat because I
Yeah,
see some.
we'll go to the live questions and then go back to the chat.
Okay.
Janae has started recording to his computer, but I'm sure we'll not share that more broadly. So just so people know, maybe Janae, you'll ask your question and then we'll go to Gugu after you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So it's connected to what Bolata asked before. So I'm working on TVET, Technical Vocational Educational Training Program. It's a huge problem in Kazakhstan. Our colleges are not strong, very weak. Even our president said that 70% of high school students and colleges are not strong in practical training. So I'm looking for practical training, how to expand your activities, nature-based training program. So it could be like several months training program. So I'm hoping to set up in Kazakhstan foundation program, and people will learn during the several months some basic stuff, will be ready to travel and see how it works in other countries. So it's better to see, just listen something, it's not enough. So we are going to visit Slovakia this year in September. Slovakia is very strong in contour strip organization of the land and all this water sustainability activities. So learn from Slovakia, and we hope to set up a partnership to find a college in Slovakia and to have dual educational training program, Kazakhstan, Slovakia. So I'm looking for similar problem in other countries. One problem partner could be Niagara College. Niagara College is very strong also in all these activities we want to learn. And if it's possible to set up something similar in your country, if you have some college or TVET training program, and maybe UNESCO UNIVEC training program, we hope to set up a UNESCO branch in Kazakhstan. Our president targeted to have a regional hub in Kazakhstan. So we hope to be connected to UNIVEC, TVEC. And if you have something similar in your country. Sorry, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that question, because like a lot of what we do with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature is education. So I'm sharing right now under the resource page that I had shared before, there is a page that we have called it Rights of Nature 101. And this is a page where you can find like the fundamentals to like pretty much work on a training program for the rights of nature. I will greatly advise, if this is done, that you do it with what we call in Spanish biophilia. Like this understanding that to do this, not only do you want lawyers and people to get involved to see, what can you change, but also people with biophilias falling in love with nature.
Mhm.
So take them out to nature so we can get connected again.
Okay.
I think that the most important part of this is that we are disconnected, especially in cities. We're completely disconnected from nature, so we can't hear nature's voice anymore. We can't hear what is she suffering. We maybe we understand it somewhere around us. We know that nature is suffering, but we don't listen to that because we are trapped between buildings. So a program like this, like here I'm giving you the tools, because like you can do a huge training program with the page that I just shared to you.
Mhm.
But I will greatly advise to do this training in nature so people can reconnect to that, not only that spirituality, but that sense that we are part of nature. When you understand that, then you have the will and the strength to do the changes that are needed and to strengthen the programs that you were saying. Like education in Ecuador is also very weak in many ways, but if we can do this like rights of nature education more transversally, then we can strengthen everything. There's a program here where they teach mathematics and everything through nature, not only science, but everything through nature, because we can learn so much with nature. But of course, not only do we need to learn from nature, but we need to understand that we are nature, and how is she not only this like dormant a victim, but how can we get nature into appear in legislation as a rights bearing entity, so policies can work around a rights bearing entity.
Okay.
Lisa, I thought we
Yes, I
Thank you
had
very
think
much.
another hand, but
yes, Gugu, I think
Thank
had
you.
a question.
okay.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for an amazing presentation, Nati. Very powerful, very empowering as well for people within the space of wanting to protect the environment. I saw in the couple of pictures you shared, Koma Kalinen, who's an attorney in South Africa, in Cape Town. And I think for me, that's the easiest link to talk to Comac about because I know he has continued being involved into that particular space. So thank you very much for sharing all this. We got really good insights and motivation to see what we could do in our space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sinegugu. And yes, of course, Cormac has been like an amazing ally from the very beginning. I remember in 2008 when we passed the Ecuadorian constitution, we asked Cormac to come to Ecuador. And he said that, I remember his speech, he said, speeches from all over the world are thanking Ecuador right now for this big step that you are giving. And then before he left, he said, I hope I see you again. And we've seen each other very often because he's one of the co-founders of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature and a really amazing ally. If you haven't read his book, Wild Law is one of the first books actually that I've read about the rights of nature, so completely recommended and completely recommended also as a resource. And also sharing that he's really part of the Antarctica Working Group, and he just won a couple of weeks ago the Shackleton Medal because of his work with Antarctica and the rights of Antarctica. So yes, Senego, definitely look for Cormac. He's an amazing resource and a great ally.
Let's go back to the chat. Thank you. Do you think you answered Bessie's question about the initiative in Europe? I think you might have spoken to that. Was that your?
Yeah, maybe I spoke about that for the Mar
Okay.
Menor, but also my suggestion would be that we do have like a really important European hub that I will greatly advise you to become part of. When you become a part of a member of GARN, it will tell you which hub you want to be part of. So if you choose the European hub, then you will get involved in the European hub assemblies and everything. And that's a really beautiful space where I feel that Europe is about to burst because I see that Ireland wants to change its constitution, Bavaria wants to change the constitution, France has all these initiatives, that Venice Lake wants to have rights. So all of Europe is about to burst. So I really advise you to be part of that working group where I see that all these initiatives are really coming together.
Excellent. Thank you. The next question, you probably could see it. But I'll read it in case anyone can't access the chat. What are the key mechanisms and potential complexities through which judicial precedents asserting the rights of nature can effectively translate into robust and comprehensive changes in national legislation? And what implications does this hold for the interaction of legal systems with natural ecosystems?
Perfect. Thank you, Armand, for that really, really important question. We have quite a few complexities in this, as you can imagine. Otherwise, we'll be able to advance even quicker. But as Antonio Guterres was saying in 2019, the ecological jurisprudence movement is the fastest legal growing movement in the world right now. So it is a movement that is growing quite a bit, but with a lot of complexities. One of them that you have like all these like big powers with big capital that do not want nature to be a subject of rights. As you can imagine, corporations have rights, and no one has really questioned why corporations have rights, where we should have, right? But when you say nature should be a subject of rights, then they're like, oh no, nature is an object. Whereas a corporation doesn't really exist, it's a group of individuals. But corporations that have a lot of power, of course, could be limited and could feel limited with rights of nature, because what we are trying to do is try getting back to a balance. And this is a really important complexity. Another big complexity is the application of the verdicts and the rulings. As you can imagine, we have in Ecuador more than 70 successful cases. We have some, oh, my God, sorry. We have some beautiful judgments, like I was sharing with the Atrato River and with some other rivers, but the application of those judgments is also a hinder in the movement. Just like making sure, even right now for the Cucamas, for example, if you know Marilu's case with the Goldman Prize, the Cucama women were able to recognize the rights of the Marañón River, but getting the Peruvian government to apply that judgment is one of the most difficult parts. And also, there are like quite a bit of, no, I wouldn't say problems, but of course, like all legal systems work under a paradigm of environmental law and maybe like sustainable development, but not really like in a rights of nature realm. That is different, is a step farther. Let's say with a of course, I put Ecuador as an example, but as I was sharing, this goes all over the world. But we had the Piatua River. It was a river that had accepted to build the government had accepted to build a dam in the Piatua River, and it had all of the papers under control, all the environmental permits ready. However, the Quichua people got together and said there are 5 species that would be threatened by this dam. And because these species were threatened, they called for the rights of nature, and they were able to impede that dam from happening. This is like an amazing example of how rights of nature is a way to go beyond environmental rights, because environmental rights were allowing that dam to happen, but it was going to threaten the extinction of 4 species, and hence the people were able to get organized and use this tool to impede this from happening. So this is how we should be changing the legal systems, to go beyond and look into the interests of nature. And of course, there are quite a bit of problems and difficulties, and it will vary from government and country to country. But it is, I feel, a great, gives us a lot of energy when we can find judges, for example, because judges have become a really important part of the movement. Oh, there's Cormac right there. Welcome,
We
Cormac.
have a special guest.
I was supposed to be here. Just somebody messaged me.
Welcome, Cormac. I was just speaking about you. But as I was sharing, it is really quite powerful when you're able to advance legislation on the rights of nature, and you're able to see that there are judges that could be very open, for example, to pass a case on rights of nature. I just heard from the judge of the Marañón River, and she said, when I read what the Cucama River women presented, it made complete sense to me. So I feel that is what I mean by understanding which are the cracks in the system.
Thank you. Perhaps after some more questions, we can have Cormac say hello more formally. It's so exciting to have a VIP guest come into the call. Dr. Bulat, you have some really interesting ideas about developing a joint clear statement to change the current policies. Are you thinking of the Goldman Prize winner community, or I was kind of curious to hear more thoughts on this joint statement from you?
Yes, I think that the Goldman Prize community and network can elaborate a clear statement how we can take into account increase rights of nature in the current policies, climate change, biodiversity, others, national, global, regional. Maybe we need to, based of these discussions of this seminar, webinar, we can develop 1-2-page clear proposals, because you know that we need to provide our understanding how we can change the current policy based on anthropogenic needs, and to shift for biological needs. So if not any other volunteers, I can develop draft one page, but I need some colleagues, groups, WhatsApp or Google, then we can continue this idea. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We would be happy to help support you in that. Nati, do you have any thoughts on how this could go?
Yeah, I'm really, really happy to have this happening as a result of this, Dr. Bulat, and I'll love to be able to support you in any way. I think that if there can be a statement drafted by you about like the need to promote a different system, a paradigm shift, and like I think that you are all very respected heroes and around the world. If we could have you coming up with a statement about why there's a need to change the system, to understand us as being part of nature. I will love to be part of that effort, Dr. Bulat. So please count me in to help you with like resources, revision, ideas, anything that you might need. So I'm very happy that that can come to be.
Okay, I will develop this draft statement and share with you for further development. Thank you.
And also, anyone else on this call, we encourage you to join in if you'd like to be a part of this. Please just put a note in the chat or contact me and I can connect you as well. And what a wonderful idea. Laureen has a question. It would be helpful to have support resources geared to overcoming obstacles and resistance, as I explored this action several years ago and buy-in at the local government level was not there. Probably she believes it was due to relationships with developers, property, investor groups, and industry. So yes, how can we get more tangible support and resources out there?
Lorena, I completely hear you. I feel that that happens like in many parts of the world. We do in two years ago we created the Global Parliamentarian Fund for the Rights of Nature because we believe that there are parliamentarians all over the world, authorities who do want to promote this and make this change happen. If you do find, for example, an authority or a parliamentarian who will be willing to be part of this effort, that is also a space of organizing and getting maybe that local government like a bit stronger. If it's bought off by like a developer or something, maybe it's not, that's not the crack in the system that we're looking for. But there are sometimes people in government that would do want to do things differently and want to hear from, I don't know, the Ministry of Environment in Panama that is doing a great job for the rights of nature, or the Ministry of Nature in Aruba who's changing the constitution, and you know, getting governors and people in government government authorities involved with this, I think is a really good idea as well. But also, if you have that support or that wall of developers and investor groups and industries that are going against the rights of nature, there's always like self-organizing, of course, and what the community can do. And we're always more. We can always do more with self-organizing. And I think that learning about different examples that are happening all over the world not only gives us hope, but also allow us to get organized. And eventually we are the voters. So we can definitely push things to happen in one direction, either by proposing a new law or by presenting a case in the court system. I think those are the two paths that we've seen like as very successful paths to reach victories for the rights of nature. But we'll be very happy to guide you, Lorraine, in any way that you feel that there can be some light where you're coming from.
Thank you. And I'm wondering, please continue to raise your hand or you can put your questions in the chat. Cormac, would you like to say a few words since you kindly joined us and you're a luminary in this field? Just to introduce yourself, perhaps.
Hi, apologize for dropping in. I got a message from Senegal about whether or not I didn't know it was on, so I opened it out of curiosity and didn't expect to be on the screen. But thanks very much. My name's Cormac Cullinan. I work as an environmental lawyer in Cape Town, and I also am the director of the Wild Law Institute, which is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to advancing rights of nature. I was one of the people with Nati and others who founded the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature it's 15 years ago. And about 23 years ago, I wrote a book called Wild Law, which really set out the idea of earth jurisprudence and the application of the rights of nature. So since writing that book, I realized that to bring about rights of nature, you need a lot of people on your side. And so most of my efforts since then, like Nati's and Linda's and others on the group, have been focused on trying to build a global movement that's capable of driving that forward. And so now lots of new initiatives, one with Antarctica, another one we've recently launched to get Table Mountain Range here in Cape Town recognized as a being, a legal person. But yes, it's wonderful to see how suddenly the movement is accelerating very, very quickly. I'll stop there.
That's wonderful. And that's why we are doing this call today, because our Goldman Prize winners are such effective champions and leaders in the field. And we know that many of them would be able to lead this forward as well. Nat, please, love to hear your question.
It's an observation. Hello, everybody. Nice to see everybody there virtually. It's an observation. I think one of the reasons why we're having issues is this aspect of separating things. We're not talking about rights of nature. We have human rights, but humans are part of nature. Could the human rights laws and things be broadened that it gets into the rights of nature, which is getting a new system, because humans are part of nature. We talk of biodiversity. I mean, biodiversity is nature. We're looking at climate change. It's nature is changing, and that is why we're having climate change. So these separations, I think, is one of the reasons why it's like we are being made to have sections, and rather than complementing and making things work in a complementary manner to get the whole. But it's like we're looking at sections, and each section is running on its own. It's being a parallel, like railway lines. So not going to meet in the infinity, but we should meet here and now. So I'm just thinking that could it be that rights of nature, human rights should sit into the rights of nature to make it complete. Thank you.
Cormac, perhaps you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Liz. Yes, I agree completely, Nat. And sometimes we certainly take the view that humans are part of nature, and sometimes quite often I'll write nature with a capital N to communicate that it's like a great being that we are part of. So I definitely share your view that human rights are and when we worked on the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, which was adopted in Cochabamba in Bolivia in 2010, the idea was, in a sense, that would complement the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if you like, is a species-specific declaration, but for one species, and this would sort of sit around it and contextualize it within rights of Earth as a whole. And I think one of the interesting things also is why so many some really great people in the movement like Vandana Shiva and Nimobasi and many others is because everybody's busy, already got their own jobs to do in their own organizations. But I think rights of nature is one of the few things which is talking about system change very directly, because we recognize that we can win battles, but because the legal systems are biased against us and really organized to facilitate the exploitation of nature, that you also need a long-term strategy to change the rules of the game. And rights of nature is very oriented to that. So I think many of the people get involved as part of their long-term strategy, even if they've got really short-term immediate aims. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Nati and then to Helen. Hi, Helen.
Yeah, but very briefly, just to say that we've gotten that question before, and of course, what we're aiming is that to have rights of nature be so like the big umbrella, where we're all inside. But of course, we do need to bring nature into law. That hasn't happened before. Nature has been completely forgotten. So we first need to understand that nature has rights. And then when everybody understands that we are all part of nature, then we can all be under that umbrella. So I completely agree with you, Nat, in the idea that we are working towards this unification. The whole movement is aiming towards the understanding that we are nature. But I remember when we were in Chile, and they were debating the fact that if Chile was going to include the rights of nature or not. And there was an Ecuadorian advisor that said, the rights of nature is something that we shouldn't be exporting, she said. And I remember Ramiro Zavila's response, and he said, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was passed, I think that everybody was excited and celebrated that. And nowadays, rights of human beings keep being violated every day. We see that in the war, we see it everywhere. However, it was worth passing on a declaration of human rights. I think that that's what's happening right now. It's worth passing a universal declaration of nature, of the rights of nature, and it's worth presenting that nature has rights as a whole. However, we need to give nature rights in order to understand us as part of. So I think that we need to give that missing piece a voice before we can really work as a whole. But that's the aim, Nat, completely. That's the aim.
Thank you. Helen?
Hi, my name's Helen. I'm an attorney in the U.S. My concern in working with indigenous populations as part of the fight against fracking, for instance, was that we did not want to acknowledge the legitimacy of U.S. courts versus, say, UN courts. Like tribes did not want to partake in U.S. courts. And remaining in kind of this oppositional standpoint of even rights versus obligations, like talking about universal human obligations to the whole instead of my rights, because my rights, and especially for people who consider liberty and say power to be opposed, if I'm liberty, then in fighting for my liberty, I actually have the right to be violent and suppress you. Well, in the real world, no, I should not. And so how does the buying into the idea of rights in what I consider to be the master's house, how do you avoid that being the tool and giving very legitimacy and feeding the dominator attractor based on exploitation and extraction, and actually feeding that rather than a alternative attractor that's focused not on the rights of nature, even as opposed to human rights, but the rights and really obligations of relational integrity outside of these dominator colonialist structures. It seems to me that we're often feeding it feeds on our opposition versus focusing on something not that we're opposed to, but that is part of an expansive, totally different quantum state than the one we're in.
Maybe Lisa, I can start, and I'll give the word to the lawyer, to Cormac, and maybe to Linda if they want to complement that. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been working on this for such a long time that I'm getting used to it. But Helen, that's a great question. We do have, and you'll know, for example, Casey Camp Horenek, who's been working against fracking in the U.S. The Ponca Nation became the first nation in the U.S. to have rights of nature, because they understood that bringing rights of nature and into their tribal law was also allowing them to complement and go against the U.S. repressive laws that could go against them. So what we are understanding is that rights of nature can be and is very complementary to the rights of indigenous people, for example, and it's sort of like getting into their own battlefield. Like what you were saying, the laws are made by the exploitative and are made for that system, but we have not been fighting in that realm before. We have been in resistance. Whereas, like including that into law is allowing us to get into their battlefield, I feel, in many ways, and is allowing indigenous people, for example, to have even more tools. Even to be very creative, Helen. I remember having a conversation with Casey, and we're hoping to bring this into one of the verdicts of the Mountain Valley Pipeline Tribunal, that when there's a violence against women in indigenous tribe, then that case can be taken into the U.S. court, for example. And Casey was saying, why did we take this case of the violence against Mother Earth and use the same sort of like legislation for violence against women? So it's like this idea of like, how do I understand what are the cracks in this system? Because it's a system of oppression. We all know that. But how do we change that system? Because we are all in understanding of that. And I understand that the situation in the US right now, it's difficult to have hope of changing the system. But I have my hopes up for the rights of nature.
Cormac or Linda, would you like to jump in as well?
Okay, let me go first and then Linda perhaps then add. I mean, look, it's a very good question. The way I see it is that some cultures made up the idea of rights. I mean, it's not something you can find in nature. Not every culture did that. Other cultures have got different ways of dealing with it. So if, you know, a tree or a river or mountain doesn't really care whether you think it's got rights or not. The issue is the point of the rights is first so that you have to force people to accept that it must be a holder of the rights, that the tree or the mountain is a subject, not an object, because it has rights. And then secondly, to create the corresponding duties on humans. So even the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, more than half that document, or about half that document, is human obligations, not rights. But if you're in an indigenous society which recognizes that we live in an animate earth and that, you know, everything is a subject, not an object, you don't even really need to talk about rights. You can go straight to the sort of duties or the obligations, which I think is what you were referencing, Helen. But it is a difficult thing, because when I was writing Wild Law, I really thought about whether I should use the word rights, because it comes so burdened with history and language of particular culture. And I thought that, you know, if you use, say, the word interests, it's easier to see. Rights imply a more adversarial relationship, and if you said interest, you could more easily see that, you know, my interest and your interest may coincide, and it might not be in opposition. But then I thought, well, in legal terms, interests are not as strong as rights. Rights trump interests. So if we had human rights and nature had interest, then the humans would still be above in the legal hierarchy. And then on the other hand, if you said, well, nobody has rights, you know, nature has interests and humans have interests, then we would end up fighting or alienating the human rights movements and the indigenous rights movements, everybody who relies on rights. And I felt they should be allies with them. So as imperfect as rights is, and I agree with you on that, it is a way of translating, shall we say, indigenous world vision, world cosmologies into a language which the international community can understand. So it's a kind of, I see it as a kind of imperfect translation, and maybe one day we'll get into a world where we get beyond rights. But I think at the moment, if we want to engage most legal systems to protect other than humans as well as humans, it's hard not to use rights.
Linda, did you want to add to that?
I think it's all well said. I don't have anything in particular to add other than we can have both. Rights are a stepping stone, but that doesn't mean that we don't say ultimately it's about obligations, and that's where we're headed. You know, it's a process. It's not an end goal. So it's a process along the way. And if we don't engage, as both Natty and Cormac said, right now, we'll lose so much. So we do get to say it's a process, and we're looking toward the future where we're not reinforcing this duality.
Thank you. Ricardo.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Natty, for the very nice presentation you have given to us. And I fully agree with you, you know, certainly. But I want to ask you a question more of a philosophical type, you see. When people talk about nature, usually they think about rivers, forest, but we humans are certainly a part of nature, and we do things. And the question is, how, if the things we do cannot be a part of nature also, or how could we build something that is not a part of nature, given that we are natural beings? That's the thing, we have had that discussion here in our institution where I work, that is CESTA, Friends of the Earth El Salvador. And some people say, well, we have to divide between nature and culture. They say, if you have a spoon, that's culture. Yeah, but the spoon is built by natural beings. How can a natural being build something that is not natural? Of course, we do build a lot of things, like cities, for example, with some characteristics that we may not like pollution, like weapons, like a lot of things that we may not like, a lot of things that we like, of course. But to us, the right is acquired by the very act of existence, to avoid calling nature and non-nature. To us, there are different kinds of nature, like the nature where humans do not affect it. That's how we divide it here. We say the natural world without the interference of humans. That's another thing, because then we mean, for example, a river that is not polluted, things like that. But I think we should start thinking about how we understand the world we have created. I was just wondering if you have some thoughts about that, Nati. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. That's a very interesting question, and I feel that yes, we are nature, and what we build can, like, some people call it like natural capital, right? Because it's not necessarily nature, but it's built out of like natural things. I would like to answer that question by understanding that even with the question from before, like my rights stop when your rights start, and with that understanding that yes, I can build something, I am a natural being and I can build something with natural materials, I will say. But if that something, for example, is something that can I can be building a nuclear bomb and that can affect and can destroy the whole world, then those are the limits, or the limits for nature itself. Nature is not only when you think about nature, you think about a river, you think about a forest, yes. But what we're trying to do with the Rise of Nature movement, understand that nature is also a tree that is outside your house. Nature is also the park that is in your city. Nature is all around us. And how do you change your relationship with that nature? Not only when you go to a national park to have a vacation, but how do you change the relationship with your river? And understand that whatever you do, even if it's not natural, cannot go beyond that nature, go beyond the nature's limits, those nature's rights, and impede that from evolving and existing itself. So we should not be building anything or doing anything that goes against the very existence of nature, because of course we'll also be impacting ourselves and nature as a whole. So the Rights of Nature movement is not really building new conservation tools. It's not telling you have more natural parks. It's saying change how you relate to nature in general, and then limits will be put into what you can build, so that you cannot put nature's existence into risk. So I think that, Ricardo, that's a very big philosophical topic that you have included here, but it's because we are still thinking that nature is separate from us. I think that when we found that interconnectedness, then that debate will be much easier.
Thank you so much. Gloria.
Oh my gosh, I just got done typing the longest comment ever in history of Zoom. I don't have a lot of time. I have to jump off now, but I was just really appreciative of the presentations. I I think over the last 2 years, I've been in different conversations about rights of nature, but this was my first time, I think, really just seeing how you're using that and just I got so excited by the little frog just winning this case. And it's something that I think that we've thought about and it just sometimes feels so far out of reach. But this gave me so much hope because I think environmental law has failed us in so many ways because it still remains so centered on what our interests are as people. And that's not always easy. Sometimes it's not just about what our interests are as people, because we may not see the benefit right now, today, but there may be a benefit in future. But even so, it doesn't have to just be about that benefit. And mostly for us, it's economic benefits, or well, maybe some social. But I think for the most part, we've really just focused on what we want and what we need. And this is such an incredible leap in how we can make the law or litigation work in a very different way. So I'm really excited to follow the work that you're doing. I hadn't heard about this network, this alliance before. So this was really interesting to get to learn more of what you're doing. Yeah, so thank you so much. That's the comment that I had.
Thank you for that wonderful comment, Gloria, and thanks for joining. And everyone, thanks for joining. If you do have to go, of course, we understand. We're so glad to have you here today. But Nati, you have time for a few more questions? Excellent. Janae, you're next.
Yes, thank you very much. Ricardo mentioned about cities. So this is my question. It's related to cities. And Nati, Ricardo, maybe you can comment our cases, what we're having in Kazakhstan. So what's happened in Kazakhstan, we had a previous president who decided to build a new capital. And he killed some lakes, Taldeko lakes, wetland. He destroyed lakes and decided to build a new capital on the wetland area. So it's happened with one city. And now we have another president who decided to copy Singapore. And also he decided to build this new city on the river nearby Balkhash Lake. It will definitely destroy this Balkhash Lake because huge city will consume a lot of water. So my question is how to influence on big bosses like president of the countries, because it's huge machine, a lot of brainwashing that Singapore is good, this big tall cities is good. It's like civilization and all people will be civilized, live in the apartments. I don't understand this situation. Why we have to destroy nature? Why we don't live in the normal houses close to the nature? Why we have to build this Singapore? I don't understand. Kazakhstan is a huge country. Why we have to copy Singapore or New York? I don't know, some big tall cities. This is my question. How we can influence on our presidents do not build cities like New York, Singapore? We don't need it. So huge country, small population. Why we need these big cities? If you can help us, how can we influence on our presidents do not have this type of ideas?
Thank you, Janai. That's a very good question because that's exactly maybe what Ricardo was saying about like building like us as natural beings, like building this like natural capital that is like completely going against nature. And that is because of the disconnection, because we're thinking only about like human beings and we don't understand that we do to nature, we do it to ourselves. And at the end result, I can just quote like an indigenous person that they were saying, oh, we need to like do like this like oil extraction in your territory. And she was saying like, why? And she said, well, we need money. And why do we need money? To build hospitals. And she said, but if you exploit the oil, you will be polluting my water and my river and I'll get sick and then I'll need to go to the hospital. Right now, I don't need to go to the hospital, So it's such a dumb way of looking at things that you need to like destroy something to have capital to be able to try to save to heal yourself. Whereas what you need as human beings is a healthy ecosystem. What we need to have like real development, if you want to say like real, not development, real well-being. Like that's why I like the Summa Causa in Ecuador. Is like having a good relationship with your nature around where you have like a healthy ecosystem that will assure your life different from like a big city that is going to be built over a lake that is going to be polluting and impeding the natural cycle to functioning. And when that natural cycle is impeded, then you will be affected too, because that water will be polluted. And that's because of the disconnection, Janai. So my only advice to how to reach your government authorities is to get organized with the people that understand that whenever you are damaging that nature, you're damaging your citizens. And how those authorities are elected, how those people first of all elect the right person, and if those people are in power, what do the people really want? People really want to live well. People don't need like big cities, people need health. And we've seen all these like millionaires saying like, I will change all my millions for some breathing time, so it's just understanding that.
Yeah, it's very complicated. It's very difficult. They have all this mass media promotion. It's very difficult. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Nat.
Back to nature and people. People are part of nature. What we are creating, we're creating out of the context of nature, and that is what is destroying nature. We forget that we are part of nature. Nature lives in a balance, and that balance has a carrying capacity. And that carrying capacity, what humans we are trying to create, what we are creating it out of the framework of nature. We're moving what humans are constructing. We are creating. Yes, we are creative beings, but we should create according to the principles of nature. That things we create, when it gets into the other aspects of nature, should work and maintain the balance that is needed. But what humans are doing, what we create is created out of the framework of nature. We put ourselves out of nature. Like when we had the chlorofluorocarbons, for example, good that we use, but it goes into the natural system, it creates a havoc. It doesn't fit into the natural system. So what humans we need to create, we should look at how natural aspect that we are, that when we create, it should fit into the natural framework. Once we create things out of the context of nature, that's where we're creating troubles. And that is why we're having all these climate change, negative climate change effects. So cities can be built, but cities can be built within the framework of nature, with the resources of nature that nature has given us. I gave a talk and I mentioned this, for example, we're drilling. Nature has decided in her wisdom to have those carbon-related fuels under soil, and humans we think will bring them out. We have the sun, we have the renewable energy that humans we can create and make it fit nature, but we decide to do things against the way nature works. And once we do that, we're creating problems not only for us as part of nature, but for the overall natural systems. And that is what humans we should think of when we're creating something as being nature. We should create it within the framework of nature and not outside the framework of nature.
Liz, since that wasn't a question, more of a comment, I would just like to say that's what we want to produce by that debate is what we want to produce with the Rights of Nature movement. We want to really push people into saying like, why? Like nature has rights, like why? And have, I think that we're all under that same understanding. Well, maybe not governments or maybe not corporations, but I feel that that is what we're trying to do, to start that debate of like, of course nature has rights, of course nature is alive, of course we are part of nature. How do we make that possible? How do we change that paradigm?
Thank you. And then Ricardo, you might be our last comment of the call.
Okay. When we see problems like climate change, biodiversity, erosion, poverty, violence, repression, all these kind of things, to me, they are expressions of a more fundamental problem. You know, that's like when a little baby has temperature. That's a problem. But maybe that's an expression of an ear infection, for example, So to us, the fundamental problem is that there is an inadequate, inappropriate relationship or interaction between humanity and the rest of nature. To me, that's the problem. We have not learned how to interact properly with nature. And that can be shown by the way we extract resources, process resources, use resources, dispose the wastes, and distribute the benefits. All these kind of things show that we are not having a proper interaction with nature. How do we call that? Political, economic, and ideological system. And that is what we have to fight to change. A system that forces us, or makes some conscious in us that we must have that proper interaction with the rest of nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What an inspiring and invigorating discussion. Thank you all so much for joining, and a special thanks to Nati for this excellent discussion, for our other guest speakers, and for our hardworking translators. Thank you all. That was a workout to get through it. So appreciate all of you, Patricia, David, and Laura. We will follow up with other opportunities to engage with Garn and with the group. So thank you all very much, and please let us know what you think of this call and other topics you'd like to cover. Nati, do you want to say anything in closing?
Just like to thank you, Liz, and everybody here. I'm very happy that Cormac and Linda were also on the call. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and I'm so happy to meet you all. You're all our champions. So I'm very happy that the Goldman Prize has now have 2 years, consecutive years with Rights of Nature winners, and all of you guys are our heroes as well. So I'm happy to be working with you all. I'm glad that you we have been able to share a little bit more about the Rights of Nature movement. If you want to join GARN, it'll be our pleasure. And yes, if you are working on that draft statement, we'll work with you, because I think that it's the time to be working together towards this interconnection. So thank you, Liz, for the opportunity. And I love to share this space with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye,
you very much.
everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.